brevity that's relatively short, right? I mean, you can't have a long book about brevity. But the idea being that the goal of communication isn't to say what needs to be said, it's to say what needs to be heard. And as communicators, it's real easy for us to get into this. I got to get my message in. I got to get my message in. And we obsess over getting our message in. And we forget that our goal is not our message. Our goal is the message they need, right? And so, and with that is kind of my, within all of that, you talk about the nuggets, Nick, like the idea that effective communication is not measured by saying what needs to be said. It's measured by saying what needs to be heard. And that's the very nature of taking time to be brief. And there's essentially four elements to it. It's knowing who you are, right? You have to be able to understand who you are. And there's a lot of emphasis put in this about you got to know your brand, you got to know what you're trying to say, you got to do that. And that is an essential piece of it. Years ago, I was pulling into a parking lot and there was a bookstore in this mini mall, and the bookstore had a sign in the front window that said, "Don't judge a book by its movie." And that always stuck out to me. I thought it was brilliant. The only thing I hated about it is that I didn't think of it because it's so good, But um, the idea being then that the problem with judging a book by its movie is that you're going to think the book is about this, but really you don't realize that that message was probably translated according to a screenwriter's interpretation of it, and it probably isn't all that aligned with what the author meant. So on one hand, you have to know who you are and what you're trying to say, but then you have to know who you're talking to. And your audience is going to change the way you speak. The same word could mean two totally different things. I always use my marriage as an example of that. Like I can say one thing, my wife can say, or my wife can hear this, or she could hear this. And it's totally up for interpretation. And that's two people who are living the same lives, who have been married for more than 20 years. And you've got people translating the same exact words in two totally different ways. If I say to you, there's beer in the fridge, am I telling you, go get me a beer? Or am I telling you to help yourself? Am I telling you, no, don't bring yours in because I have some? Am I telling you, get it out of there because there's teenagers in the house and we're leaving town? I mean, there's a million things you could be saying. So you have to know who you're talking to. So you have to know what you're saying. You have to know who you're talking to. Then you have to know what words mean. And the words that you choose matter. And a cliche, it's easy to speak in cliches, especially in the real estate space. There's if you're trying to get someone to align with you and you say like my brand is integrity and experience and honesty, truthfully that's what everyone in your space is saying, right? And that doesn't mean you don't value honesty. It doesn't mean you don't value integrity. It just means you have to find a way to say it that people will hear it. So you have to know who you are, you have to know who you're talking to, and you have to know what words mean. And then kind of the final piece of it is the very title of the book. Then you have to take that and make it brief. Because what we often forget is that any form of communication it's a privilege to be listened to, right? It's a privilege for someone to give you authority. Even what you're doing right now, you're giving authority to people and to your time. You're giving up time to engage and to be part of a discussion. So being listened to is a privilege. And it's up to us as communicators to take full advantage of that privilege, but to be very responsible with it. And that's the process of being brief. And the analogy that I use for this and comes from the book, and it goes like this. To live a long and healthy life, a well-balanced diet and regular sustained activity is essential, statistically increasing both the quantity of a person's days as well as the quality of them. As a regular intake of healthy food, along with consistent choices for good sleep, manage anxiety and physical activity, build and reinforce the immune system, engage muscles, restore cognitive health and physiological capacity, decrease atrophy, improve dexterity and nerve and muscle responsiveness, and improve overall performance of both the immunological and physiological functions of the human body over the course of a lifetime. Or you could say, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Now, the first one is jam-packed with information, and the second one is memorable, but they both mean the same thing. And on one hand, you can never arrive at an apple a day keeps the doctor away without knowing the bigger piece. But it's not enough to know the bigger piece unless we're going to follow it and get concise and get intentional. Because why say in 12 words what we could say in 4? Because it's a privilege to communicate. We want to make sure that when people are listening to us, that we're giving them the essential truth, that we're taking the time to make sure that what we're saying matters to them, that we're remembering them as the listeners. So that's the summary of Take Time to Be Brief. And it's what I do is help people not only understand who they are, but then articulate who they are in a way that their audience can receive it and understand who they are in a way that's unique.
Okay, that's fantastic. I just want to open it up for Q&A. Anyone can just come on, and thank you for sharing that. I can't wait to try to implement that in my posts this next week. Who's got some?
One of the things that I've heard from many members of, so the way Nick and Yona have this set up is there's pods, or there's, groups of smaller people that are out there posting on LinkedIn and just trying new things. So anyway, a lot of the people in my group are struggling with brevity, and I think that's something that just to your point, it's the bio, yeah. It's a challenging thing, right? To concentrate your message down into, I really liked what you said about, the two-way communication, but what you really want to get across is what the other person needs to hear. And I think just coming into those were going to be my feedback, was what you said, but in a different way, right? You need to know why are you on LinkedIn? What is your goal? Like, which is essentially, what do you want to be saying? And then 2, who is your audience, right? Who's your avatar? Who are you speaking to? And then you can deduce, what is it that they need to hear in regards to real estate or investing or whatever, right? What are the pain points? What are the benefits?
Yep.
How do you distill that down into nuggets of very meaningful content? So yeah, it's great concept. And
think about the word tips. Like if I'm talking to a personal trainer and they say, I have some tips for you, I'm going to get really excited. If I'm talking to a financial advisor and they say, I have some tips for you, I think that they have some inside track on. And so advisors will never say the word tips because of compliance and all of these things. But a personal trainer can use that word all day long. These two words, one is like a swear word and one is your credibility, right? Same word, 2 different meanings.
That's a really good point. A lot of us are raising capital for different projects, and your words do matter. And specifically, you can't promise people how a project's going to go. So we like the phrase projected returns. I like using ranges of what we project the asset to do, but also caveating everything you say with, man, every investment, we can't forecast the future. I can't tell you what interest rates are going to do. I can't tell you if there's going to be another downturn. I can't tell you what's going to happen with the next presidency. What I can tell you is, historically, this is how things have performed. And this is why I believe in this operator or this asset class or this particular opportunity. But how have you guys approached those words when it comes to, the hoped for performance, the projected performance?
So, to echo the brevity, I definitely have to work on that, both on talking to investors and also in terms of answering questions. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to get the book. So for that, yes, for SEC, our lawyer is very clear on that, right? So you always have to say, projected return, or sometimes we say things like, historically, we've had these returns. So when somebody asks me, what do you expect? What can I expect? Historically, we've performed 20%, average return or something like that. So that, so you're not really saying this one is going to do so, but just telling them the historical facts.
Yeah, I would second there is, I hear people, I hear people say, can't lose, no brainer, recession proof. And I flinch because no such animal. Like, there is no guarantee. even in like a debt position, the bank, there is no guarantee that somebody's going to pay their mortgage. Like you hope they do, but there are zero guarantees. So I've always been very careful to make sure that people understand that there are inherently risks in every investment, right? I don't think I've ever been guilty of over promising anything that that real estate can do. Even though I'm high on real estate and I love investing, and I think there's room for equity positions that have big gains. That you just have to understand the risks associated with them.
One of the things that I'll say about this process as well, destinations, first of all, are incredibly overrated. Every time we have a destination in mind, it will change, right? It's like there was a day that all I wanted was to graduate. All I wanted was to make it through the winter. Well, but eventually I made it through the winter, and then that goalpost moved. And I had a different goal, a different destination. And when it comes to brevity and effective communication, the way you reach people, I mean, it is constant prototyping. But the goal is to always be responsible and accountable for the messages that you're putting out there, with integrity of your message and with the brevity of it, so that you can effectively reach them as quickly and as effectively as possible, as opposed to, well, it's kind of like this and it's sort of like that. It really is, but it's a prototype. I mean, it's a process. You're going to get brief, and then in a year you're going to say like, man, that is not it. I could have said it like this, and that's a whole other side of it too, that it's going to morph over time as you develop it, but as you commit to it. That's the challenge, as well as committing to it.
I have found ChatGPT actually to be helpful, because I also can get pretty long-winded. So two things that have helped me get precise were, one, would a sixth grader understand it? So stop using very complex acronyms, because if you're not in the real estate space, you're not going to know half of what I'm saying in some of the posts. And the second piece is, if you write it like you're writing it to a friend, like Dear Susan or Dear Adam, whoever it is, who's your ideal client, and then write the post, and then, like, love Sandy or something, or regards. And then you just remove that top and bottom greeting, which is one of the things that another creator teaches is really good. And then take whatever you want to write, put it into ChatGPT and say, condense this, make it a nice, pretty format similar to this, and it helps you. And then the other one is the wheel of emotion and vocabulary. So you can put in the words and say, another way to say this briefly. And you can say that. But for you, thank you so much. I wasn't aware of your book. Appreciate your time coming on this. And being brief is so important in terms of listening when you're speaking to people. So is that something your book covers, or it's mostly for writing, or is it also for talking? It's everything. Be brief in your communications and listen more.
It's everything, because you can be the most well-informed on your brand, but if you don't know who you're talking to and what matters to them, it's all useless. So you have got to be a student of your audience, whether you're speaking or whether you're writing something or whatever it is. You've got to be a student. I mean, I remember I was at an event once, and the keynote speaker at this event said, I would love it if I could just get everyone to set their phones down and put their phones on silent and just engage with me here. And on one hand, I understand what he was saying. We're always distracted by phones or whatever. But on the other hand, there was a part of me that was like, why don't you just be such a captivating speaker that I don't want to sit here and play words with friends or whatever was cool at the time. It's the idea that I need you to captivate me. You don't force me to listen to you. Captivate me, fascinate me with what you have to say, engage me with something. That only happens if you know me, right?
So we have 2 years and 1 month, so we need to listen more, do our homework ahead of time. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do? Besides, all I know about you right now is you have this one book that I've got to buy and read. Besides that, tell us a little more about you, and how did you get into writing a book? How does it help you with writing anything else? Newsletters, posts, anything else?
So I worked for years in the marketing space, and I always thought I valued marketing. I always thought I was a marketing guy. And then more and more I realized I'm putting together other people's messages, and this is not effective. And it was bugging me. Ultimately, I had some things where I had this kind of blog that people started following, and it was connecting with people in a way that I had never experienced before. And that was when I began to discover the value of story. And what I really thought I liked about marketing was I thought I liked the communication and marketing, but really what I liked was this idea of capturing a story and making that story palatable and accessible to people. So that's what I do for people now. I do what I call brand dilemmas. I solve brand dilemmas for people. And a brand dilemma, I mean, just picture a brand dilemma as a wall where there should be a road. And there are different kinds of brand dilemmas that organizations are up against, whether they're new or old, whether they're huge or tiny, whether it's a one-man operation or giant. There are brand dilemmas out there. And so I help people solve those brand dilemmas. So I work in a consulting space on that, helping people, yeah, understand who they are. But really, it's about what good is it if we know who we are, if we never know how to translate that for people to hear it, for people to experience. Because ultimately, we don't do what we do for the marketplace. We do what we do for us. It means something to us. It's valuable to us. So to help people not only understand who they are, but then how do they get it out there? That means something to them. And so that's what I do for businesses, for individuals. And then I have opportunities to do things like this. There's been a couple of groups that have done kind of like book readings with my book, and I get to kind of share with groups where it came from and tell some of those, more of those stories and that as well. But it's everything from like consulting and contracting to trainings and cups of coffee and everything in between.
For what it's worth, I walked in,
Thank
so I
you.
work at a co-working place, and I walked in, my friend was working there. I saw him in the window, so I walked in, and then there's AJ. And up on the whiteboard, they're unpacking a brand concept of this, I don't know how you call it, a collective of other
Yeah,
entrepreneurs.
yeah,
And
it's like yeah.
I was reading it all and I was like, this is genius. What is this? And literally, this was yesterday in my co-working place. And then sure enough, I didn't know AJ wrote a book. So it's happen chance that he's here with us today. So I'm really excited.
That's fantastic. And that's the thing that ends up happening is people, and the way that I describe it to people is like, look, you might have like, even in your space of real estate and what you're doing, you might know all of your, like, I'll call them building materials. You might have all of your inventory, but having all your building materials doesn't mean you have a structure. You just know what you have, but it may not be structured yet. And that's what a lot of what I do is I help people just kind of lay everything out and say, okay, this is what it is, and this is how you talk about it. This is how you say it concisely. This is how you say it in a way that other people will understand. Sometimes you got to say things differently just so people notice. If you're selling mattresses, you could talk about comfort, but everyone's talking about comfort. Maybe we should talk about rest, right? It's just a different way to talk about comfort. I mean, so this idea of differentiating our message in a way that people will understand who we are and how we're different.
Wonderful. I want to be conscious of everyone's time. AJ, thank you for jumping on.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Excited to
Thank you
dig
very
more
much.
into this. And for all of you guys here live and watching the replay later, really appreciate you guys showing up. And the coaches, we're here for you. Any last words that Mike or Sonia you'd like to say?
Persist, don't quit, don't worry about vanity metrics. Worry about what you actually gain from the experience of writing daily. You'll get better and better. It gets easier and easier. Likes and comments don't count if everybody liking and commenting on your post is not your ideal client. What really matters is how you grow from it, what you discover about the platform, the numerous connections you're going to make from participating in a challenge like this. So focus on the real stuff. Good luck.
Yeah, likewise. It's a lot of times, especially in an environment like this, it can feel there's a lot of comparison points, right? We're all in there and we see each other and who's performing how, but it's exactly that. Like, what is your objective? And for most of us, it's getting leads. And so that's the real metric, right? If you get 1,000 likes and no leads, it's really not helping you versus if you get 10 likes and 2 or 3 or 4 leads out of it is one thing. But yeah, take advantage of being immersed in a lot of different posts, seeing what's working, what's not working, hone your craft, take advantage of the groups in Slack. And yeah, it's a personal challenge. It's not really a contest. So I'll just echo what Sandhya said and definitely hang in there. So halfway point, just a few more to go.
Awesome. And just as a reminder, for those on here and watching this replay later, we do have the challenge document that has a list of all of the participants. And this yellow section is really just here for you guys. to help grow. So kind of track your starting kind of metrics of followers and impressions. And then you can see here, if you page through, most people, it's blue, it's getting more leads, just like what Mike was saying. So define a goal, think about where you want to be, and then work towards that. You know, your coaches, the community, we're here to help you. Excited for the growth and momentum. And with that, we'll sign off. So appreciate your guys' time.
Go get them. Thanks.
Thanks all.